Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. This is me doing my introduction to my newsletter for May 18th, 2018. Without more ado, I'll get on with the news items. The first story I have for you is food will be cheaper after Brexit if we ignore special interests. It says those who oppose dropping tariffs on food are simply defending special interests. That's an interesting article because I've said for quite some time now that we should have cheaper food after we leave the EU, and so this is reinforcing that, and I think we should be aware of the situation on that one. Next one is delusional EU chiefs need to wake up and see the warning lights. It says some institutions are so intransigent, so inflexible and so bloody-minded that their inability to change, even when faced with immediate or immense pressure, elicits a grudging respect. Again, this is me just trying to say that everything is not okay with the EU. And I think you have to be aware of what's going on in the EU to make sense of Brexit. And the next story is Brexit is a golden economic opportunity for Wales. I actually did a small video, which I haven't actually posted on I may have posted on the site in the community, but it was going to show how Wales seems to be doing really, really well. It says Wales' dragon economy outperformed England, Scotland and Northern Ireland in gross value added in 2016, and Cardiff is the UK's fastest growing capital city. Unemployment in Wales is lower than the rest of the UK. And as you noticed with the devolved arguments, Wales decided to accept the deal with the UK government, whereas Scotland has not. Clearly, for anyone being open-minded about it, one can see why Sturgeon wants to break up the UK clearly, and she sees this as a possible rift because clearly the Supreme Court is going to rule for the UK government against the Scottish bill, Brexit bill. So that just will give her another grievance so she can say, see, Westminster tells us what to do. But frankly, I really genuinely don't think the Scots give a damn about this particular one, so we'll see what happens. But I think it's interesting to see how Wales has tackled it. And of course, as Wales does have an independent party, they're really quite a minority in the Welsh Parliament. And it kind of goes to show, in my view, how, because Wales is focusing on Brexit and doing well, Scotland is forever chasing independence, and that is their overriding aim. I mean, they're honest about it. They don't give a damn what happens to Scotland as long as it's independent. It can go down the tubes after that. It's okay. I mean, that's the SNP's remit. Not to have a successful Scotland, but to have an independent Scotland. And so they're honest about it, you know. Next story is the place that inspired 1,000 paintings. The Canadian Rockies. This was a BBC article I spotted, and some beautiful pictures there. I thought you might enjoy kind of reading that and looking at the pictures. Next one is high costs thwarts reform of the NHS and social care. Said the challenges faced by the Scottish Government's flagship reform to integrate health and social services have been exposed in a report identifying multi-million-pound financial pressures and shortfalls in services. Again, if you're interested in the history of Scotland, I mean, it's going to become more and more to the fore as history books are written about Scotland. But clearly, I think if they spent the time focusing on Scottish issues instead of Scottish independence, we might get a better result. Anyway, I thought it might be interesting to read that. Also from Canada, I found the 2018 Governor General's Innovation Awards. says the Office of the Secretary to the Governor-General is pleased to announce the winners of the 2018 Governor-General's Innovation Awards. These awards recognise and celebrate outstanding Canadian individuals, teams and organisations whose exceptional and transformative work help shape our future and positively impact our quality of life. So I just thought you might be interested in that. And people in Australia, if they're doing anything there similar, you might let me know and I can maybe feature that in a future newsletter. Next story is 100 Years of Scotland in Pictures. It says a collection of more than 14,000 photographs capturing a century of life in Scotland is to go on public display. Next story is Study into Economic Impact and Potential of Robert Burns. Scottish Government's funded study is believed to be the first to look at the economic impact of such an icon. Next one is Holyrood vote to refuse consent for Brexit bill. Theresa May's key Brexit legislation has been rejected by the Scottish Parliament in an unprecedented vote that paves the way for a constitutional crisis. Well, we all saw that coming, so. But if you want to read the background, it's there for you to read. More intellectual rigour and less virtue signalling needed by the SNP government. This is actually announced by Jim Sillars, who's obviously tied in with the SNP, and I thought it would be an interesting one for you to read. Diabetes blood tests could mean end to daily insulin jabs. Says doctors in Edinburgh believe a simple blood test they have introduced could allow some type 1 diabetes patients to come off insulin. I mean, considering how many people have diabetes, and I would imagine some people reading this do, like I'm a diabetic myself, so I thought it was an interesting article about. Disinformation is a weapon we should be aware of, not fall for. There has been quite a bit of coverage of defence issues in the media recently, ranging from the US, UK, France missile strikes on Syria via the Israeli-Iranian exchange of fire over the Golan Heights to the appearance of new and innovative military equipment at Russia's annual May Day parade in Moscow. I thought it was a really interesting article, so that's why I wanted to include it. And that basically completes the news items I picked for you this week. Now on to Electric Canadian. I'm continuing with the transactions of the Canadian Society of Civil Engineers and have up the 1938 volume. Again, a massive amount to read in there, and tons of obituaries, and many of them Scots. Then Videos of Canada. I keep mentioning the trouble with YouTube is you get a video from YouTube and then sometime down the line it comes off because it's either copyrighted or the person's died and left and taken down their videos or whatever. So you've almost constantly got to try and review the videos you put up. And as it happens, I was going for a link about the Rocky Rail Mountaineer, which I think is a fabulous video, only to notice it was dead on the site. So I went to YouTube, found another copy of it under a different name, and I've now included that there. But while I was there, I went through all the province sections that I've got and found several other videos had died, so where possible I've replaced them. So a bit of an update on that. Next story is Heroines of Canadian History. This is a book that was produced in 1910, and I thought it was kind of interesting, so put that up. Also Hearts of Gold, being chronicles of heroism in Canadian history. This was published by the Ontario Women's Liberal Association in 1915. Then I've got Principal Grant of Queen's University, Toronto. I did some books and articles about him, which you can read at the link I put up against that. Fascinating person, that, incidentally. Nova Scotian that went to Glasgow University and came back and has done a semi-wonderful job as principal of Queen's University in Toronto. And then I did a page for Canadian Botany. Basically, I've noticed some items on Canadian Botany, and I thought maybe I might include a few of those, so I created this page and I've added a couple of books to it for you to read. And then the stories from Conrad Black, Spite Over Justice, Why Donald J. Trump is Truly a President Like No Other, and Trump, the Non-Proliferation President, the 3 articles this week. Then on to Electric Scotland. Continue with the Commonwealth of Australia, and that in volume 8, which is July 1813 to December 1815. In here we're learning of Lachlan Macquarie, and I've also added a book about him to the page as well, so when you read volume 8, underneath it you'll see a link, and that links to information about his time in office. Then I have Tracks of McKinley and Party Across Australia. It's by John Davis. It's one of the expedition, who was one of the expedition. He edited from Dr. Davis's manuscript journal with an introductory view of the recent Australian expedition of McDougall, Stewart, Burke and Wells and Lansbury, etc. So again, I thought it was an interesting one to include there. Then we got Best Newfangled Family Tree. She's got in section 2 of the June 2018 edition. So that's available to read. The Very Reverend Principal Hugh Watt. He was moderator of the Church of Scotland, and you can read about him at a link I produced here. Similarly, I've got information up about the Reverend Dr. Thomas Maxwell, who was president of the Scottish Church History Society, and there's a wee bio about him. Then I found information about John Thompson, the photographer, and added this person to a significant Scots section and included some of his photographs. I've actually got a very good article from the Daily Mail about him, and also a book about him, about his pictures from China. Then I found another article about General Alexander Mackenzie Fraser. It was actually while doing a search for another Fraser that I came across this, and it's actually on the Scottish Golf History website. So I've taken that to put it on my site, but I've also left a link to the Scottish Golf History website where you can see some pictures and stuff. Then I have a Gaelic book, Altonian Hero Ballads. It's collected in the Highlands and Western Isles of Scotland. It's arranged, corrected metrically and orthographically, sorry, I can't pronounce that, and translated to English. So you get the original Gaelic text there, but you also get an English translation, so that's got to be good. And then the final one I've got is Reminiscences of Senator William M. Stewart of Nevada. This is actually a Scots descendant, and I must confess I started reading the introduction to the book to get an idea of what it was about, and I thought the introduction was stunning, to be honest, and that made me want to go in and read the whole book, which I have done. Loved the stories, really good. So that's the story of this week, is the introduction to that book. It says, when one has reached the age of 83 years and is rounding out with honour and dignity a career extending over 3 generations, marked not only by the picturesque adventures of youth, but by the signal services of a statesman to his country in maturity, it becomes at once his privilege and his duty to tell the story of his life. And it goes on from there. It's quite a character. It's in the gold fields, mining, farming. Brought up in a log cabin. His grandparents were Scots. So I think that goes to show what Scotland's contributed through its people and its emigration. So I hope you enjoy reading that. And basically that's it for this week, and I hope those of you who are interested enjoy Harry and Meghan's wedding that's coming up this weekend. and I hope it's a good weekend for you. Thanks for listening. Look forward to talking to you, and see you next week.